When dealing with a falsehood, you're faced with two options. You can accept it or you can reject it. The basis upon which we take one of these actions is a product of our critical thinking capabilities and a desire to know what is true instead of confirming our bias. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. On Brainstorm, we choose the hard truths over the comforting lies. Reason, compassion, skepticism. This is the Brainstorm Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Brainstorm Podcast Skeptic Studio, where we do interviews, major topics, and news related to skepticism and atheism. In this episode, I talked to Peter Coffin, YouTuber and commenter on all things societal. We got into it pretty quick, and it was a lot of fun. We even promoted his new book, which was, I guess, kind of the point. Not much more to say, but here it is, my interview with Peter Coffin. All right, welcome to the Brainstorm Podcast Skeptic Studio. Thanks for joining me, Peter.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, I guess the main reason for having you on is to talk about your book that just came out. But I wanted to talk a minute about your recent Adversaries episode about Planet Fitness.
Oh yeah?
Because I love it when people take down Planet Fitness.
They're unique, aren't they?
They are. They're pretty bad for like, cause I've been about a bit of a gym rat for about 10 years, eh? Mm-hmm. And, just, it's a place that like has always talked about how they're non-judgmental, but about, 7 years ago, they kicked people out because they were too muscular. So
very non-judgmental.
Very non-judgmental. So
that's the thing, that there's always that. So it's obviously not the same thing when you're kicking people out who are too muscular.
Yeah, no, that's right.
But it's kind of, it's not something that someone can say, hey, we're not judgmental, and anyone would be like, oh yeah, I totally believe that. Because yeah, it's judgmental. It's just a different kind of judgmental.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's not really a different kind of judgmental because it still does the other kind of judgmental. It just says it does.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so they're hypocrites and they're, in a sense, liars too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. My girlfriend actually has a membership at the Planet Fitness here because it's like $10 a month.
Yeah, it's very cheap. I mean, in that respect, that's actually a great price for a gym membership.
Yeah, for sure.
But you get all this crap attached to it.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned the pizza they give out every week.
So they do that there too.
Yeah,
that's one that we've seen. Like, we're not members of Planet Fitness, my wife and I, but we have talked. Like, my brother is a member. We had a couple of friends when we were living in Utah that were members, and that was something that was just a constant. That we're always talking about how there's free pizza, and it's just like, that seems so weird for a gym.
For sure, yeah. It's like, we'll sabotage you while we don't judge you.
Exactly, and it's like, no judgment, but eat this pizza, and the world will think you're fatter, and you'll come back here and eat the pizza, and you'll exercise too,
that's
right?
Yeah.
It's such a weird, like, carrot and stick situation that you don't even really know which one's the carrot and which one's the stick.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's actually weird to work out in a place that, like, I guess discourages grunting.
Yeah. That's such a weird thing too. I saw somebody sent me a picture of is it the lunk alert it's called?
Yeah, the big purple light and the alarm that goes off if you drop weights.
Yeah, that just seems like inherently judgmental.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, hey, you grunt when you're lifting maybe 100+ pounds. You suck.
Yeah, that's right.
Basically. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's just bizarre.
Eventually, their slogan is going to be Planet Fitness, don't join us.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it's like the commercials are super judgy towards overweight people. The rules are super judgy towards people who are like over muscular.
Yeah.
And everything you do in there gets either some kind of an alarm or pizza shoved down your throat.
Yeah. It's a very strange place.
I don't know. It's something I don't even understand. It's something I can't bring myself to join. There's one locally here.
Right.
I can't bring myself to join it even for like the purposes of like investigation or anything. It just seems so bizarre to me.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a strange environment when you're used to different other gyms.
There's another one near me that I've considered joining. That's just like, I think it's like 24-hour fitness. And there's nothing like, they make no attempt to brand anything. It's just, it's like colorless and like drab, and it looks like the 1980s. But it like, to me, that's more appealing than Planet Fitness.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, in the bodybuilding world, that is almost a brand, like that dungeony kind of, we don't appeal to the mainstream type of gym.
I don't know that it's actually even that, though. I think it's more like just a very drab as opposed to like...
It's just cheap.
I've seen a gym that looks exactly like what you're talking about.
Right.
That's like, it's kind of dark, and it in some ways even like resembles like an arcade.
Right, yeah.
Like an old school, not like one of the more destination restaurant arcades they have now, but like from the early 90s, late 80s, when that culture was big. It was intentionally kind of like, the normies don't go in here. They had the big submarine circular windows on them, and it was always dark, and they had colored lighting, so it felt like some sort of otherworldly experience. I've seen gyms that remind me of that. I'm not it's not 1-to-1 or anything, but the whole, like, the normies don't come here thing.
Yeah.
And I think this one that I'm talking about, it just looks like nothing.
Right.
It looks like it's not made for anyone. It's just like some workout equipment that somebody threw into a strip mall.
Right.
And
Nice.
And that appeals to me.
Yeah,
like,
that's fair. Yeah, no, that's fair. This is just a
like
place
garbage,
to overdose.
no branding, nothing, just like it's garbage. Okay, I'll go.
Yeah, that's right. We don't advertise.
We don't want any customers here.
Yeah.
But not because we hate customers. It's just because we hate work.
Yeah, that's right. That I can respect, actually.
It gives off that kind of a vibe to me.
Yeah, for sure.
That lazy Sunday style gym.
Yeah. We don't expect
I guess
you to
I
come
could
here.
work on. What's that?
We don't expect you to come here very often.
We have a gym here. You can pay us for a membership. That's pretty much the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right. I suppose we might as well get going on the purpose.
We could talk about this for a long time, I think.
Yeah, we probably could. Like, it would be an hour on why Planet Fitness and other gyms are branding themselves weird. But so your book just came out, Custom Reality, and it kind of touches on a lot of things that you've touched on in your videos. How long have you been working on this?
Well, as a book, I started writing it after Trump won within that month. And I had just kind of I wanted to write a book that sort of encapsulated a lot of the things I've been talking about for a long time, because I've been talking about branding and lifestyle marketing and all of this stuff for a very long time. I come from radio. I used to work in radio in the early 2000s when I was just getting out of high school and I was in college and got out of college. I worked both on air and in marketing, and a lot of the stuff that we learned while I was in the marketing aspects of it was how to write commercials, and all of it was basically based around emotion, feeling, and lifestyle. And that sort of set off alarm bells for me, because I felt it was really weird that I was trying to corral somebody into a lifestyle oriented around like a car lot or something.
Right.
And that kind of set off alarm bells. And then various things have happened through my life, whether it be the whole Gawker controversy that everybody likes to bring up whenever I'm anywhere. Or just like a lot of the other things work I've done. I've spent a very long time on YouTube. I was on it since 2006. I was making sketch comedy there, song parodies, and just observations and stuff that I turned into humor. I've sort of, as I've gotten older, more converted that into serious discussions, even though I haven't really spent all of my time on my channel doing that kind of a thing. Last couple of years have been mainly more serious discussion over all of the things I've sort of accumulated over a lot of experience. And when Donald Trump won, everyone was just like, what happened? How could this have possibly happened? And I was like, well, I've been talking about stuff that kind of leads up to this for about a decade now. So let's maybe try to make it into a book. And
Nice.
I don't know. I think it's a decent book.
Well, I'm a particularly slow reader, but I was on a plane for a couple hours there last week, so I read through, I think, 2.5 chapters of it. Mm-hmm. But and it starts off in a very personable way, like it's very easy to read.
I that was one of my big intentions, was accessibility of the ideas. I didn't want to write something because, like, I'm not saying that it's not important that people read theory if they want to really have a hard grasp on a lot of the things that are going on in the world. You can go back to Karl Marx. You can go back to, Debord, Foucault. There's a lot of people that you could read, and they give you a better idea than I'm going to give you on any of this. But I'm basically talking about observation, my feelings on things, my thoughts on things, attempting to connect a lot of things together. A lot of common phrases we hear, like marketplace of ideas, right, or consumer identity, and all those types of things. Just trying to corral it all into one coherent, hey, buyer beware, basically.
Right. Something that you kind of touch on that I've noticed myself is that people, like, well, I guess it's kind of almost the entire theme of the book, is that people are living in these different little worlds that that they've essentially created for themselves. So I wonder, like, without giving away the book, can you kind of...
I don't care. We can talk about the concepts of the book all day. I do it on my channel.
Right. Yeah, like...
It's just kind of, it's a means to sort of corral it all into one thing.
Right.
There's no way we can cover the entire book.
No. But I wonder, like, you had to come up with a few different terms for the thing. Mm-hmm. Like, so what are some of these terms, and what are some of these ideas that are not explained anywhere else?
Well, I suppose I use a lot of terminology that I think sort of, I attempt to make terms that reflect something a little better. Like consumer identity is something I think everybody's heard of, but it sounds very benign, for instance.
Right.
It sounds like this is the identity of our consumers. It's not really describing what's going on. It sort of implies a passivity. It sort of tries to paint it as a thing that marketers are observing and therefore reacting to. But it's actually something I think that they try to cultivate as opposed to attempt to understand. So I came up with the idea of saying that is calling that cultivated identity. And that's one of the things that I talk about. I talk about perpetual correctness,
right,
which is basically the need to be right at all times. It's sort of derived from meritocracy. We live in a supposed meritocracy.
Right.
That's, I mean, obviously a very, very debatable thing. I obviously am on the other side of that debate. But, we sort of get a dictation from various authorities in our lives saying, hey, so this is what we need out of you at all times. And they need you to be correct. They need you to believe that you're correct at all times so that you can progress or project the idea that you are correct. You need to basically convince other people that you're correct at all times. So you're basically always on both offense and defense about your point of view, which sort of works to reinforce where you are, whether it be
right,
sort of, a lot of people like to use the term bubble. like this person's living in their own bubble.
Right.
And I've also seen a lot of people say, like, you act like you're the protagonist of your own movie. You're so self-centered and stuff like that. It's like, but everybody does. That's everyone. Nobody isn't like that. We're supposed to be like, we're raised to be like that. And particularly in the United States. But I think a lot of the Western world is basically set up this way to varying degrees. Because we're all, very capitalist. We're all very intent on believing that it's a meritocracy and that if you just work really hard, you'll get somewhere because you will have accrued the merit that's necessary. But that's not really the case, and I wanted to criticize that. I also talked about, this isn't my term, but I tried to make a distinction between individualism and individuality, one being an ideology and one being a descriptor that an individual is unique, and the individuality is the primacy of the individual versus individualism is the primacy of the individual. Individuality is a descriptor.
Right.
And individualism sort of works with what I would call perpetual correctness and cultivated identity to sort of, generally make it so a person is not very skeptical of things, doesn't question a lot of stuff, sort of retreats into a consumer brand, so to speak, and lives in it, and consumes lifestyle products. Like I made I call it Very Important Documentaries. That's obviously a jokey title. I'm calling something that I am making very important. That should be. I had somebody like, this isn't even a real documentary, and how dare they? He made it himself. Why would he call it very much? This was on Reddit, and I responded to them. It was it wasn't in a thread that I should have seen because I was looking at, I searched my video to see if anybody had posted. A bunch of people had. I was pretty shocked by that because I don't normally get that kind of attention. And I replied to them. I was like, "Psst, the name of the series is a joke."
Right.
Because I'm not being serious. But anyway, I use Star Wars to talk about this. Like, there's so much Star Wars lifestyle products in the world.
Yeah.
So as the Star Wars fan goes to the store, they can pick up a number of things that they would normally pick up as a generic product that's like a pastel color or something, like a towel.
Right.
Has Star Wars on it. You can get Star Wars soap, you can get Star Wars candy, you can get Star Wars lettuce, which was an example I used in both the book and in my doc.
Right.
It's such a ridiculous thing. And because it's so ingrained in your identity, because they've spent so much time trying to, encourage you to develop an identity based in a consumable, you sort of see that and you go, okay, well, that's my lettuce. That's my kind of that's mine.
Yeah. No,
and it's
it's funny, actually.
It's so messed up.
The day that I watched that documentary or that video of yours, me and my partner, the day before, we went to Hot Topic.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm looking at the Anarchy toque.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, okay, this is pissing me off, but I really want that toque.
I know. That's the thing. Like, it's not like I see the anarchy stuff, or to a lesser degree, you don't see the full communist stuff as much, but I see it and I go, I'd like that.
Yeah.
There's also there's illustrated books of Marx and
is that right?
I think there's a Conquest of Bread that recently came out. They're illustrated. They're simplified and illustrated. They're meant for teenagers, but it's something I'd like to have around the house as my kid gets older.
For sure.
But I think about the fact that it's literally there to make money off of me. And it's like, I have such a distaste for everything. Nothing is enjoyable.
Yeah, that's right. I still bought the toque.
Yeah, it's not like I'm not going to buy that stuff.
Right. Yeah, I still got to buy the stuff, but it is
the thing is you can't blame the individual. That's the other thing. In criticizing the individualism aspect of everything, the merit-oriented everything, we also have to remember that you and I and our choices don't influence the system. We don't have any agency over how everything is done. We have agency how our personal lives end up.
Right.
And we don't have a lot of agency because a lot of the choices we're presented are specifically there to sort of funnel us down a certain road that benefits someone.
Right.
And it's not, I wouldn't say that it's bad to buy like an anarchy anything.
Right.
I don't think that it really affects any. I mean, somebody's going to buy it or somebody's not going to buy it and they'll end up buying like a Metallica shirt or something.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, that's right.
It doesn't change a lot, materially speaking, to not buy the anarchy merchandise, but
Yeah.
it helps to know why it's there, who's benefiting from it, and how systemically this all happens, or even just that it all happens. So we can start maybe collectivizing around the idea that it's not necessarily completely right, as we're all dressed in anarchy merchandise.
That's right. And somebody's still getting rich off of it.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be fun to put them in the guillotine and be like, hey, you remember this? Remember these shirts? Ah!
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm joking, of course.
Of course. We would never put anybody in a guillotine.
It's a great joke. To be fair, it's like the best possible joke.
Right.
I never complain about those jokes. Like, I see a lot of people complain about them.
Yeah.
But, like, they're really funny.
Right, yeah. Like the off to the gulag.
Yeah, I mean,
joke.
like, I don't want there to be a gulag or to throw anybody in it, but they make me laugh a lot.
Yeah,
and also, Guantanamo Bay is kind of
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
So, it already kind of exists, and it works in service of liberalism itself, so...
Right.
I guess I can make those jokes if I want.
Yeah, that's right. That joke is fair game. Something that I wanted to ask you about that you kind of touch on in the chapters that I read was the idea of objective truth.
Yes.
It seems from what I read that I mean, you believe that, and I mean, I believe that there is an objective truth. I just don't believe that I have actual access to it because I'm filtering it through so many
You
things.
have it then. You've got it. You figured everything out. In my opinion, that's like the best. Okay, so this is the way I look at it. Objective truth is a term, and therefore it's a human thing. Like, it's a thing we came up with. It's an idea. So what we're describing isn't even necessarily exactly what is there when we say objective truth. But what we mean is everything as is. There is no modification of human beings. It's just there. That's not something, like you said, we really have access to because of human perception. It's something that no matter what is going to modify your perception of something. I see a light, and it's definitely what I observe. It's exactly as I see it, but somebody else sees it from a different angle, sees it through a pair of glasses, sees it not through a pair of glasses. Maybe they need a pair of glasses.
Right.
Sees it from a different social class, sees it as a different identity. People all have different perspective, and it modifies everything just a little bit.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And what we call reality is an idea. It is a thought. It's something that we came up with. So if we sit here and say to ourselves, I see objective reality. It is only facts for me. You're saying, I see something that we came up with, and it is only something that we came up with for me. It's perception. Even language is just an expression of our perception. It's not something that we can be, objective, universal, these types of things. Our idea of fact is found through things like the scientific method or material dialectics.
Right.
These are processes of collectivizing of evidence and information and corroboration.
Yeah.
And what that ends up is an informed consensus. And an informed consensus is collective reality. It's not objective reality. It is our best guess based on multiple perceptions of information. And that is not objective reality. It's our best guess at objective reality. So,
yeah. So what is objective reality?
So ultimately, like, what we have to understand is there's a wall between us and the universe as is. We can get very close to that, and we can make informed guesses, informed conclusions, informed consensus about that if we use evidence, if we peer review things, if we spend our time actually verifying stuff and collaborating and corroborating, that it can be very useful, and it can create what we look at as a collective reality. And I use the term collective reality because that's what an informed consensus is. It's a lot of people who have spent time on scrutiny and have collectivized their idea of what is real. And yet you end up talking to people and they're like, collectivism is bad. But the scientific method is collectivism.
It's interesting.
Individualism is like, okay, apply individualism to reality. It is, let's say an individual is perpetually correct about things. They have to feel right. They're pressured to feel right. They're pressured to be right. They're pressured to never admit being wrong. So when they observe something, their judgment is what they trust rather than any scrutiny. They don't spend the time or look for people who have spent the time on this type of stuff. They end up trusting their own judgment, their snap judgment, and you end up having a lot of people who are acting off of their perception specifically of reality, and that's all they're acting off of.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
And that's basically what the book itself is sort of against. Unfortunately, we're kind of socialized to do that. We're asked to act that way. I should say we're coerced in so many words to act that way. There's a lot of lies, a lot of misinformation that's placed in our environment around us. And oftentimes, like I said, our choices are very limited to things from that misinformation. And yes, you can break out of it. And yes, you as an individual can exercise scrutiny and break yourself away from it. But that doesn't change a lot. That being said, if we were to change everything systemically and people hadn't actually broken that socialization within themselves, those people would still have that mode of operation going forward, and that wouldn't be good either. So in a respect, we do have to individually care about these types of things, but individually we sort of have to make the decision to be collective about reality.
Yeah,
sucks, basically. It all sucks.
It all sucks. Yeah, I've often wondered where the balance is, because I used to be pretty hardcore into the individualism type mentality. But at some point I was like, but all of society is made of individuals. So at some point, like, don't we have to all agree that this is how we want to run our society? And this is the kind of thing that we agree on in this aspect. And so it is less.
That car is red. We have to agree on that for it to be true.
Right. So
even though, objectively speaking, if you were to remove human perception, it would be red. It just wouldn't be red because red is a human idea.
Right.
But it'd look like that to something else.
Yeah, it just wouldn't have the label that we collectively kind of applied to it.
Yes, that's the other thing. We have to acknowledge that literally everything is collectivism. Language is collectivism. All of these things, they're social evidence that we don't operate on just an individual level.
Right.
And, you know, I also come from that same place. I was very individualistic, because, not necessarily because of my upbringing. I come from a very working class upbringing, and you're told to sort of think around community a little bit more when you have less.
Right, yeah.
But I personally ended up in a lot of situations where my friends would be like, we got to talk about individualism. The world is your oyster and all that.
Right.
I had friends that had money, is what I'm saying.
Right.
And they sort of stoke that aspiration in you, and you're like, you know what? I am an individual. I should be thinking about things this way. And the thing is, it doesn't work.
Right. Yeah, it's, when you have, I guess this must be part of the book that I haven't gotten to, is like, how do you kind of collectivize all these different individualist ideas that how do you bring these things together in a sense?
Well, I don't have that entirely figured out, and I won't represent the idea that I do. But to me, a lot of it is just understanding what exactly is being done, like what is being pulled down around us in sort of a look at how the environment is controlled and how our identity is stoked and how we're sort of pushed in various different directions to keep ourselves from talking to each other and realizing that our experiences aren't quite as different as maybe we think they are. I mean, certainly there's something that is going to be different between, let's say, a black person and a white person's experience,
right.
But money isn't a different thing for these two types of people. It's just the way that one might acquire it or how much of it is necessary to get out of a certain situation, or are certain situations more prevalent. But that stuff is stuff that I think that if we were talking to each other more, would stop feeling so foreign to a lot of people.
Right.
Because so many other things about our lives are just utterly constant. Like, a poor person is a poor person no matter what race, no matter what religion, no matter if they're not religious, if they're, have a manual labor job, or if they're disabled. You start to see that there are very similar experiences that could make us actually care about those very different experiences a little bit more. But ultimately, like I said, I don't have like a concrete process laid out yet, but more of us need to be talking to each other. More of us need to be thinking about things in terms of community, and not just community with the people who look like us and also like Star Wars. Which is, by the way, like, seems to be what a certain section of Star Wars fans really wants, is for all of the Star Wars fans to be white dudes, which is really weird to me.
Yeah, that is weird.
But, it's been a couple of Star Wars movies now, and they've managed to make that argument about all of them. So
yeah, that's true.
I don't know. It's weird.
It is weird.
But it's also default. They're like, in the terms of video games, so to speak, in a microtransaction economy, these are the whales, the people who are so invested into a thing that they will just dig deeper and deeper and deeper until they get to a point where they either realize that they've gone too deep, or just start lashing out at people who haven't gone that deep. You get this dynamic of people who sort of believe they own something because they have consumed so much of it,
right.
Because they're basically addicted to the feeling of sort of completeness that certain things bring them temporarily. Like I said, to use the language of microtransactions, if you open a loot box and it's got something you want in it, that's great. You feel complete for a few moments. And there's a lot of people who chase that. It's like 3% of people who play like microtransaction based video games make something around 60% of the revenue
right.
of that, which is amazing to me. But it's not just that. It's not just video games that have microtransactions in them. It's everything. They want that class of hyper consumer. Like I said, in video games, it's called a whale. And I think that people could probably benefit even more from using that term elsewhere, because it's kind of the goal of basically anybody who's trying to market. They want like a few people who are just going to sink tons of money into it, because those people will do it quickly, they'll do it reliably, and they'll continue to do it.
It makes me think of Las Vegas. I was just there for vacation, and to some degree that's a similar thing. Like, you get the free spins or the big noises and the lights or whatever, and you feel really good for a minute. And that's why you keep plugging the money in.
Yep. It's really gross when you think about how similar everything is to that.
Right.
It's like, oh, well, at least it's only in Vegas. And then you start to think about the mechanics of things. You remove the lights, you remove the formal title of gambling, and
Right.
what isn't like that eventually. Like,
yeah.
it's really kind of messed up.
There was an article a few years ago, it must be quite a few years ago now, about on Cracked Online, about World of Warcraft and the way that they give you kind of random rewards, but you got to invest such and such amount of time and such amount of money, and it was very similar to Vegas, and it was very similar to likes on Facebook, and it seems to be like that.
Yeah, that's the thing that's gotten really scary is like social interaction has become that. It's become a commodity in of itself. That's basically what neoliberalism is, the commodification and marketization of things that are not commodities or markets. Social things, basically, not just economic things, but just anything in your life. The solution is the market.
Right.
So we have stuff like that where you start to see these parallels between, like you said, Vegas and, Star Wars or whatever. And you're like, all right, so I think there's a problem here. We actually need to talk about this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think more and more about the Facebook likes and the retweets, and even how how much I myself get a high when I get over 10 likes on a post, or
okay, so it's not really that hard to get Mark Hamill to like your tweets.
Right.
It's actually pretty easy to do.
Just mention how good he is.
Well, just reply to him at all. It seems
right?
like he likes basically all of the tweets. Or either that, I have a very good record of getting likes by him. One of those two. And I really don't think that it's me being like great at getting Mark Hamill's attention.
Right.
Because I don't think that makes sense. But the point is you can get, a celebrity or, even just some large amount of exposure via just metrics on a website that aren't controlled by anybody but some like computer brain, basically. And the computer brain doesn't care about who you are or what you are. And in a way that feels liberating, but it's also very scary considering it's sort of dividing everybody up into these little, I call them validation gangs. Max Stirner would call it a union of egoists, people who are sort of out for their own self-interest and therefore unionize in some way, but are still like doing it basically out of their own self-interest. I call it a validation gang because it's often just based purely around whether or not people agree with each other,
right.
Which is not a good basis for friendship. Obviously I'm not going to be friends with a Nazi or some crap like that, but
right.
It's not good to seek friends based entirely on only if you agree on things. It's bound to make you find people who are nothing like you, for one, because your philosophy on things might seem similar. Like, okay, like to use Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, 95%, if you put their beliefs on a graph, just line up entirely.
Right.
But they're nothing like each other.
Right.
There's a reason for that. It's because there's an actual internal philosophy going on outside of that external one that we all can sort of quantify. It's something less quantifiable. And that's why I think it's really a bad idea to just seek out people who agree with you. It's not bad to seek out people who agree with you for political purposes, for the reasons of collectivizing and things like that. But we are also human beings, and that is not all that we do.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I don't know. You just end up sort of, like I said, you end up in people like to say echo chamber, and I don't really like using that term because it's one that right-wingers tend to use a lot more.
Right.
But it is something to worry about. It's something to care about. Am I just seeking out people who agree with me, or am I seeking out people who I could actually be friends with? What are you doing? And it's very easy to get sucked up in validation. It's very easy to enjoy reinforcement to our own viewpoints. And to have metrics show up, like you said, Facebook likes, Twitter retweets and likes.
Right.
It's very satisfying to see those numbers go up very high. I had a video on Jordan Peterson.
Oh, yeah.
week and a half ago, I want to say. And it's done very well, and that is certainly satisfying to me. I'm happy because a lot of the feedback for it was obviously BS from Jordan Peterson fans,
right?
But a lot of it was people like, oh, I'm glad somebody's finally done this, and that's kind of like why I did it. Like nobody's actually like sat down and talked about how he's talking to people. A lot of people have tried to debunk his points, and that's really not the point of what he's doing,
right?
Because his points are pretty stale 90s. Conservatism
easily debunkable if somebody just looks at it.
A lot of it is very easily debunked. Like he gets numbers wrong, like just on a constant basis. But you know, it's not really what people care about with him. Just like Donald Trump, like he's very easily debunkable as long as people agree to live in a collective reality, so to speak.
Right.
But if you individualize, if you sort of check in on Donald Trump as your leader of your validation gang, as opposed to as your person existing in the world who is fallible,
right?
I don't know no other binary to put it in, but it's scary what the sort of individualization and the the quote unquote rational self-interest is allowing people to do as they semi-collectivize. I've talked about how what people call tribalism is kind of the individualist version of collectivism. It's lots like I said, the union of egoists, or what I'm calling a validation gang, is kind of what people call tribalism. And it's just kind of, I don't know how to put it. It's really corrosive. It's not good.
Right.
It's a bunch of people who are out for their own specific interests.
Yeah. And that pretty much sums up everything now.
Yeah, sadly.
So I guess before I get you to plug your stuff, I wanted to kind of, what was I thinking? I wanted to ask about something that you talk about quite a bit, and that's the idea that attention is the currency in the marketplace of ideas. And
the marketplace of ideas is basically the glue that holds everything that I've talked about together. It's basically how. So I talked about perspective. Perspective is really important that we think that our own perspectives are objective reality, because in the marketplace of ideas, this is a neoliberal concept. It's not necessarily from neoliberalism, but it's neoliberalism personified, if you ask me. If you take ideas and instead of regarding it as a human concept, as a thing that we have and think about and do, instead you marketize it, you make it a commodity, and what is the most important dynamic in a market? Competition.
Yeah.
It's competition. So if everybody believes that their own personal reality is objective reality, and everybody believes that the way that you perform discourse is competitively, basically, everybody's allowed to live in their own little reality, and everybody's allowed to have this big spectacle-oriented war over their ideology that's just constantly happening.
Right.
And, platforms like Twitter and Facebook sort of facilitate that because they benefit from it. All the argument is engagement. The engagement brings in more advertisers. It's messy. But yeah, attention is currency in the marketplace of ideas because So
as far as that goes, I mean, is there a way for us to use that to, get away from these bad ideas like Donald Trump as a president type ideas? Can we use attention and to our advantage, do you think?
I think we kind of have to, because that's the system that we're working with. If we attempt to, I think, do something just totally outside the system, then everybody living inside the system just will ignore it. They won't even see it.
Right.
So I feel like because attention is basically how we're judging things as valid or good, just something that gets more attention, because, like I said, it's a competitive situation and the thing that we're competing for isn't necessarily if it's valid or not. It's more if it gets eyeballs.
Right.
Like, I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but people in the online video industry just say that nonstop. Got to get those eyeballs.
Yeah, wasn't there something about that new Bright movie? It had like 22 million eyeballs or something.
Yeah. Yes, they did use that in what, like, because 11 million people watched it. And they're like, it got 22 million eyeballs. It's like, why are you talking about it like that? It's so weird.
Because it's a bigger number.
But yeah, exactly. It's double the number. But like, that's the thing. It's attention that validates things. Like, that thing to Netflix, I promise you, is valid. Like, it's a terrible movie. I don't know if you've watched it or
yet.
tried to watch. I've tried to watch it, and you can't get very far in it.
I've heard nothing good about it.
I was just, it's bad. It's outright bad. Like every criticism I've seen of it, I'm like, yep, pretty much.
Right.
So I haven't really saw it fit to weigh in on it because I'd just be repeating everything that I've seen from other people. But, you know, to Netflix, though, it's like, well, tons of people watch this. It seems like something pretty successful on our platform where, you know, attention is what we're looking for. People who actually sit down and watch a whole thing, they're seeing that that's what worked.
Right.
So it doesn't really matter if it's good. The quality doesn't really matter. It matters that people gave it attention, and that validates it for them, which I didn't mean to bring up Bright as an example, so I'm glad you did. That is a perfect example of what I'm talking about.
Right, yeah.
When I say attention is currency in the marketplace of ideas, it doesn't matter the quality of it. I'll bet half of the people who watched that movie didn't like it, but they still watched the whole thing because it's just like mesmerizingly off.
Right.
Like, when I was watching it, I didn't watch the whole thing because I am a person with like a lot of things going on at any time because I have 2 kids making stuff all the time, do freelance work. But I was just like mesmerized by how weird all the choices that they made in it are.
Right.
It just doesn't seem like it should be a movie. And I think that probably caused a lot of people to watch it the whole way through. And I think that also validated it for Netflix, and they'll probably do more things like that where they just sort of gauge how many people watch a certain category and figure out if a movie should be 10% survival horror and 10% comedy, and you know what I mean?
For
it's
sure.
just such a weird way of doing it, but it's based in attention. So yeah.
Yeah. So to get some attention for your book,
See, I said we can't not do it. If we don't do it, nobody's ever going to learn it. We literally have to interface with this attention thing.
Yeah.
So
your book.
Being I don't have a lot of money to promote things. I don't have big spectacles to throw.
Right, yeah.
I have to just sort of sound as if I know what I'm talking about. Which I'm crossing my fingers on that.
It sounded really like I say, I only got through 2.5 chapters because I'm a slow reader, but the book makes its points very clearly and understandably, so that and it seems to be coming from a place of a well researched, in a sense.
There's a lot of, there's some studies that I've cited in there and a few philosophers, but I mean, it's basically the product of reading a very large amount of crap over the last decade, basically.
Right. That's fair enough. That's more than a lot of people have.
Well, I guess that's even rational skepticism for you.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of a tangent, but being kind of part of the skeptical movement that I've been for, I don't know, even 5 or 6 years. I've been doing my podcasts for 4, and I think it's coming out of mainly the YouTube skepticism is like it's like the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe is a different group of people than the armored skeptic.
Yeah, they're more spectacle than skepticism.
Right. Yeah.
In my opinion. And they're also there again to sort of validate what people already think, which is, I mean, the technical exact opposite of skepticism, but
yeah, that's right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that, like, in a lot of respects, like, I'm not really somebody who gets too ingrained into communities sort of out of, validation gangs is a word that I came up with, but it's always been a thing that I've sort of been weirded out by, is how samey a lot of people will be on certain things.
I've always kind of been one of these people that's searching for their community. Like I found it with atheism for a little while, but then there was too much like 9/11 trutherism and whatnot in it. And then I found it in anarchism.
That's
and then there's all these conspiracy theories in that. And like,
for sure. Like, you're describing sort of a life that I would say I have a lot in common with what you're saying. I partially have kind of just like given up on trying to find my place. Just like, whatever. I'm just going to say all this crap that I think is somewhat critical of, we're told we're all sort of supposed to find our place, and there is a place for us, for instance. But I don't know that there really is, because a lot of it is really based around consumption. It's really intended to funnel us down either consuming content, on, like, for instance, YouTube skepticism. A lot of it is literally based around keeping you around, the drama, the spectacle, and all of that. Yeah.
It's so many takedown videos. I can't watch that shit.
I'm glad that the word hitch slap is no longer in vernacular. Right. Although I'll say I don't like that it took somebody's death to get rid of it. But
true, yeah. Actually, I really appreciated a lot of Christopher Hitchens stuff when he was around. But that hitch slap stuff, I still didn't really like. Often I'd be waiting for the hitch slap, and I'm going, well, okay, so he made a good point, but then where's the slap? But
yeah, I mean, well, the thing is he was a human being, just like anybody else. He had good points, he had bad points, but people don't want to acknowledge that type of thing. He's a god to all these people, which is ironic because so many of them literally follow him because he is an atheist,
right?
Because this is a big atheist movement, and changed to skepticism because they wanted to maybe not offend the conservatives that were gradually funneling into the movement. But I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's so, I mean, I can explain it, but it still bewilders me.
Right.
Like, I feel like I understand it, but it is still utterly foreign in a way that, like, people from other countries aren't utterly foreign to me. It's like alien to me
right.
at this point. And I feel very, to use the term alienation, I feel very alienated from almost all of this stuff, even though on paper, like, I agree with what so many people are saying, but it just seems fake. It feels like it's there to entice rather than to inform.
Right, yeah. It's, very much I think I interviewed a guy a while back, and he called it a cult of personality.
Yeah.
And
also, great song by Living Colour. That's sure. One. You ever heard that song? That song, I think, does such a good job because it criticizes, on one hand, Mussolini. It criticizes, in literally like 4 words later, Gandhi for the same thing.
Right.
Which is just like, yes, that is the right way to go, because it's all corrosive in its own weird way.
For sure.
Not necessarily, because, a lot of people, they just have never researched Gandhi. They've never thought about Gandhi. They're like, Gandhi equals peace. So good.
Right. Yeah. And then they'll proceed to like promote quotes and whatnot from him. And
there's actually a lot of scummy stuff about Gandhi.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever looked into him, but he was kind of a scumbag. He was also very pro-British imperialism, which is
troubling.
A weird thing to be for a peaceful guy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, but yeah. Custom reality and you.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess where can people find the book?
Great book promo on my part.
Yeah.
Just get off into this huge tangent and start bashing Gandhi. That's gonna bring the people in right there.
Yeah, that's right. That'll make people really want to read your book, eh?
Yeah, he hates Gandhi. I'll read the book. That's a real mainstream opinion right there.
Yeah, shit, hey?
It's available on Amazon.com as a Kindle book, an ebook, which you can read either by purchasing or through Kindle Unlimited, or as a paperback, which is available through Amazon Prime. So it's 2-day shipping, free shipping, all that. For whatever reason, it's $6.99 right now. It's normally $9.99. I didn't put it on sale or anything, so that's.
But for some reason, it's $6.99.
Yeah, I think there may be a site-wide sale of some kind going on.
Could be.
So if anybody's wanting to take advantage of that, it's $3 less. If you buy the paperback, you get the ebook also for Kindle Reader. And I think it's a decent book. It's more of a critique than a call to action, but there is some call to action. Cool. In the form of attempting to sort of separate yourself from that type of socialization, but we'll get there, I hope.
Hopefully. Yeah. No,
that's a first step, in my opinion.
It's a typical marketing move, but I'm going to offer to buy somebody who emails me, the first person who emails me that they want a copy of your book, I will buy them a copy of the book. That's
awesome. So thank you for doing that.
You bet. Like I say, I read the first bit of it. I really enjoyed it. It's at the top of my reading list right now. So.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
For sure.
I mean, I have the same thing with, I'm very slow at reading books. So the decade of me like reading like various leftist theory and various philosophy books, various science books and all that, it probably could have been a lot less time, but I read very slowly. I have ADD. I'll go off on tangents. I'll get bored. My brain will just totally blank. So I sympathize.
Yeah, my bookshelf is filled with books that I'm part of the way through. So that's my standard thing.
I'm there. I'm with you. Maybe it just is a millennial thing. I don't know.
Well, I don't know, because I'm 40, so.
Oh. I'm just on the tail end of millennial.
There you go.
Tail end. I'm 33. 35, I think, is the tail end at the moment. It's 1980s, the cutoff.
Oh, okay. So. Is that when the cutoff is? Yeah, I was.
Supposedly. If you look it up, that's what it says. I mean, right. It's all very stupid, actually. There really shouldn't be generational cutoffs. And I don't know, this is what millennials are like, and this is what boomers are like. It's like, well, if we were all talking to each other and, again, collectivizing our realities, perhaps right. We wouldn't be so separate from each other.
Yeah, as though generations aren't just gradually mixing from one to the next as different people have children.
Nothing like that. It's just there's a hard cutoff point where you become a millennial.
Yeah, that's right.
And the next one, who knows what it will be called? It could be called Pepsi Join the Conversation Generation.
Oh, Jesus.
I don't know.
Yeah, it could be.
Oh, it would rhyme. It has a good rhyme scheme to it.
Yeah, that's right.
Also has a brand, and I don't know, maybe capitalism will pay me for that one.
Makes me think of an Adam Ruins, of the guy from Adam Conover. He did a talk about marketing to millennials. And he's like, just forget the fact that there's millennials. Like, that's not a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched that video. It's really good.
Yeah.
It was a lecture, right?
Yeah, that's right. In front of a marketing or advertising thing, I think.
Yeah. I remember that was maybe a year and a half ago, I want to say.
Something like that.
That was a good one. I need to watch that again.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up.
No problem.
I've directed us on another tangent.
Yeah. So I'll get you to, where can people find more of your stuff in general?
I think probably the best place to start is my Twitter, or my YouTube, because those are the main places I post content to. Twitter.com/Peter Coffin and YouTube.com/Peter Coffin. If you're interested in like further stuff, I have a few more social media things like Curious Cat and all that. But really the best place is one of those two places. Up to the minute updates at twitter.com.
Right. You're pretty good for doing threads It's something that I have no idea how to do.
I have to do it as a thread because there's no way I can fit all my long-winded crap into a tweet.
Right. No, right on. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Okay, so that's it for this interview. I want to thank Peter for joining me and for such a fun chat. I really recommend you check out his YouTube channel because he makes heavy subjects a bit less depressing by mixing some good jokes and a bit of humor with those deep thoughts. Also check out his book, Custom Reality and You. I mentioned during the interview that I will buy a copy of Peter's book for the first person who wants one and emails me at mail@brainstormblog.net, and I intend to honor that. For everything else, you can check out the show notes at thebrainstormpodcast.com or on our main website, brainstormblog.net. I'm pretty overworked, so anyone who wants to spend some time helping out with show notes on our website will be financially rewarded and will officially be part of the Brainstorm crew. You can reach out to me in all the usual places to set things up. Thanks to our financial supporters, the Utah Outcasts, Bassett, Will, Aaron, Daryl, Dustin Sucks, Lachlan, Lisa, Magnus, Michael, Positively Skeptical, Rob, and Stephanie. If you want to join them and help the show grow, then you can do that at patreon.com/brainstormpodcast. Again, I want to thank Peter for joining me. You can find his stuff at petercoffin.com. That link will be in the show notes on the website, along with a bunch of others. You can also support us by donating to our GoFundMe for the conference at gofundme.com/shift-2-reason-conference-2018, or you can go and buy some stuff at tpublic.com/stores/brainstormer-podcast-gear. They have great shipping prices and much better than the other online stores, and they're a great place for you to get your Brainstorm gear. Thanks to Dave for our intro music. Thanks to Aaron Rabbi for doing the new intro voiceover. Thanks to Alex Kepper-Murdoch for doing the voiceover for our ads. And thanks to Jason Camo for our outro music. You can find his stuff at aloststateofmind.com. All music played is either with permission or under the SOCAN license to play. For more information on SOCAN, you can check out the music license info page on our website, brainstormblog.net. Remember to give us a rating, a thumbs up, a fave on your podcatcher of choice. Join our Facebook group, like our page, follow us on Twitter, share the show, and spread the word. Thanks for listening, and remember, the truth matters.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel, any guests, or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast with the possible exception of Corey, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors.
We just wanted to say thanks to everyone who listens to us, shares the show, gives us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or supports us through Patreon and Gumroad. We don't have a lot of interactions with our listeners, but what we have had proves that we attract some of the best people around. Smart, kind, and cool. An audience truly worthy of the titles hardcore and woo-free. Thanks for helping us make the world a smarter place.